Harlan West sat in his leather recliner, the one with the worn armrests that matched the calluses on his hands. The morning sun cut through the blinds of his Bend, Oregon home, casting stripes across the hardwood floor he'd installed himself 20 years ago. His coffee had gone cold, but he didn't reach for it. The phone call with his banker still echoed in his head. $8.2 million. The number sat heavy in his chest, not like pride or relief, but like a secret that could kill you if the wrong person found out. Harlan had built West Logistic from nothing, started with one beat-up Kenworth and a CB radio, hauling freight across I-84 until his back screamed and his eyes burned. 34 years later, he'd sold it to a California firm that wanted his routes and his reputation. The cancer had made the decision easier. Colon cancer, stage 2, caught early but mean as a rattlesnake. The doctors cut out, pumped him full of poison they called chemotherapy, and sent him home with a smile and a warning. "We got all," they said, "but keep an eye out. Sometimes it comes back." Harlan knew about things that came back. Bad weather, bad roads, bad people. He stood up slowly, his joints protesting. The chemo had stolen 20 pounds from his frame, but he still moved like a man who'd spent decades wrestling with 18-wheelers. He walked to the window that looked out over his quarter-acre yard. The grass needed cutting. The fence needed painting. Normal problems for a normal man. But Harlan wasn't normal anymore. He was rich, and nobody knew it. He'd set up the trust through Carla Sutton, his lawyer for the past 15 years. West Ridge Holdings, named after the mountain ridge visible from his back deck. Every dollar from the sale went into it, clean and legal and invisible to anyone who might come looking, including his daughter. The trust was his insurance policy. Not against cancer, there was no insurance against that. Against vultures. Harlan had seen what money did to families. He'd watched his own brother tear their parents' farm apart over a few $1,000s in inheritance. Watched neighbors turn into enemies when someone's rich uncle died. Money didn't bring out the best in people. It brought out the truth. He picked up his phone and scrolled through the messages. 3 from Ramsey in the past week. "How are you feeling, Dad? And just checking in, and let me know if you need anything." Sweet messages from a loving daughter. Or sweet messages from someone who smelled blood in the water. Harlan set the phone down and walked to his kitchen. He opened the cabinet above the sink and pulled out a small notebook, the kind truckers use to track their miles. He'd been keeping notes since the diagnosis. Dates, conversations, visitors. Little things that might matter later. Today's entry was simple. Sale complete. $8.2 million in trust. No one knows. He closed the notebook and put it back in the cabinet, behind the coffee filters where no one would think to look. Then he poured himself fresh coffee and sat back down in his chair. Outside, a blue jay landed on his fence post and started squawking at something in the neighbor's yard. Harlan watched it, thinking about how birds knew when storms were coming. They felt the pressure change in their bones, packed up their nests, and flew somewhere safe. Maybe it was time to see who in his family had that same instinct. The doorbell rang at exactly 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, the sound cutting through the quiet of Harlan's house like a buzzsaw. He wasn't expecting anyone, but he knew who it was before he opened the door. Ramsey never called ahead anymore. She just showed up, usually with her husband in tow. Harlan opened the door to find his daughter standing on his front step, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger than 35. Behind her, Cheston leaned against the porch railing, scrolling through his phone like he was closing some important deal. The man was all angles and nervous energy, the kind who wore expensive polo shirts to make up for the fact that he hadn't held a steady job in 2 years. "Dad!" Ramsey stepped forward and hugged him, the kind of hug that lasted a beat too long. "You look good. How are you feeling?" "I'm fine," Harlan said, stepping back to let them in. "Coffee's on if you want some." "That sounds great." Ramsey walked into the living room like she owned it, her eyes scanning the space. Looking for what? Harlan wondered. Signs of decline? Evidence of wealth? Both? Cheston followed, still on his phone. "Yeah, I know," he was saying to whoever was on the other end. "The crypto market's volatile, but that's where the money is. You just have to time it right." He looked up at Harlan and nodded. "Hey, Harlan, good to see you." Harlan nodded back, but didn't speak. He'd never liked Cheston, not from the day Ramsey brought him home 8 years ago. The man was a talker, not a doer. The kind who always had a big plan, but never had the discipline to see it through. Real estate had been his thing for a while until the market shifted and he lost his license for some licensing violation he never explained clearly. Now it was cryptocurrency, which seemed to Harlan like gambling with extra steps. "I'll get that coffee," Harlan said, heading to the kitchen. "Let me help," Ramsey said, following him. She opened the cabinet where he kept the mugs, the same cabinet she'd opened as a child when she wanted to help make breakfast. But her eyes weren't on the mugs. They were scanning the rest of the kitchen, taking inventory. "How's your energy level?" she asked, pulling down 3 mugs. "I know the treatment was rough. I'm managing. And your appetite? You look like you've lost more weight." Harlan poured coffee into the mugs, taking his time. "Doctor says I'm doing fine." "When was your last appointment?" 2 weeks ago." "And what did he say exactly?" Harlan handed her a mug and looked at her directly. He said, "I'm in remission. Clean scans. Good blood work." Relief crossed her face, but it was the wrong kind of relief. Not the relief of a daughter hearing her father was healthy. The relief of someone hearing that their investment was still viable. They walked back to the living room, where Cheston had finally put his phone away and was studying the framed photographs on Harlan's mantel. Pictures of Ramsey as a child, of Harlan and his late wife Ellen, of the old trucking days. "You know," Cheston said, settling into the couch, "Ramsey and I have been talking about your situation." "What situation is that?" Harlan sat in his recliner, the one place in the room where he could see both of them at the same time. "Your health scare got us thinking," Ramsey said, "about what would happen if something serious happened to you. I mean, thank God you're okay, but what if you weren't?" "I'd be dead." Ramsey laughed, but sounded forced. "Dad, I'm being serious. You live alone in this big house. You don't have anyone checking on you regularly. What if you had another health emergency? I'd call 911. But what if you couldn't?" Cheston leaned forward, his expression earnest. "What if you fell, or had a stroke, or something happened where you couldn't get to the phone?" Harlan sipped his coffee and said nothing. "The thing is," Cheston continued, "we care about you. Your family. And family looks out for each other." "That's right," Ramsey said. "Which is why we've been thinking maybe it would be better if you weren't living alone anymore." "You suggesting I move to some old folks' home?" No, Ramsey said quickly. "We're suggesting you move in with us. We have that big house, plenty of space. The kids would love having Grandpa around more." Harlan knew their house. A 4-bedroom suburban palace in one of Ben's newer developments, with a 3-car garage and a mortgage that probably cost more than most people's yearly income. The kind of house you bought when you were trying to convince the world you were successful, even when you weren't. "That's generous," Harlan said. "But I like it here." "Of course you do," Cheston said. "This is your home. I get that. But think about the practical side. If you were living with us, you wouldn't have to worry about maintaining this place. Yard work, repairs, all that stuff. Plus, we could help you manage your finances, make sure all your bills are getting paid on time, help organize your paperwork." There it was, the hook buried in the bait. "My bills get paid fine," Harlan said. "Sure, now they do," Ramsey said. "But the chemo can affect your memory, your concentration. It's not your fault, it's just a side effect. We want to make sure you don't have to worry about that stuff." "What stuff exactly?" "Well," Cheston said, "when was the last time you looked at your portfolio? Your investments? Some of those old trucking company stocks might not be performing well. And with interest rates changing, you might want to move some money around, take advantage of better returns." Harlan set down his coffee cup. "What makes you think I have investments?" Ramsey and Cheston exchanged a glance. "Dad," Ramsey said, "you ran a successful business for 30 years. You're not stupid with money. You must have saved something for retirement." "Some." "How much is some?" Cheston asked. The question hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Harlan looked at his daughter, this woman he'd raised, who'd sat on his lap while he taught her to drive his old pickup around the yard, who'd cried on his shoulder when boys broke her heart in high school, who'd walked down the aisle on his arm 8 years ago, promising to love and honor the man who was now sitting in Harlan's living room asking how much money he had. "Enough," Harlan said finally. "But that's what we're talking about," Ramsey said. "You shouldn't have to handle all that alone. Financial planning, tax stuff, making sure everything's organized for the future. What future? Another glance between them. Dad, Ramsey said gently, you beat the cancer this time. That's wonderful. But the doctors told you to watch for signs of it coming back, right? And you're 64. At some point, you're going to need help. Wouldn't you rather have that help come from family? Harlan stood up. I appreciate the offer, but I'm fine where I am. Cheston stood too. Of course. We're not trying to pressure you. We just want you to know the option is there. And if you change your mind about getting some help with the financial stuff, I know people. Good people. We could set up a consultation just to see where you stand. I'll keep that in mind. Actually, Ramsey said, reaching into her purse, I brought something. She pulled out a folder. Just some basic information about power of attorney arrangements. Nothing binding, just educational material. In case you ever wanted to set something up so someone could help you if you needed it. She set the folder on Harlan's coffee table. No pressure. Just take a look when you have time. Thanks for the visit, Harlan said, walking toward the front door. They got the message. Ramsey hugged him again, holding on just as long as before. Cheston shook his hand and looked him in the eye. We care about you, Harlan. Don't forget that. After they left, Harlan stood at his front window and watched their BMW pull out of his driveway. A $60,000 car for a man who didn't have a steady income. He wondered who was making the payments that he walked back to the coffee table and picked up the folder. Inside were printouts from legal websites about power of attorney, highlighting sections about financial management and healthcare decisions. Someone had taken time to research this, to print it out, to organize it in a folder. That someone hadn't been Ramsey. Harlan carried the folder to his kitchen and dropped it in the trash can under the sink. Then he opened the cabinet and pulled out his notebook. Tuesday visit, he wrote. RNC asking about money. Living situation, POA. Too prepared. Planning something. He put the notebook away and walked to his back deck. The sun was high now, warming the wood planks under his feet. He could see the Cascade Mountains in the distance, snow-capped peaks that had been there long before he was born and would be there long after he was gone. Harlan had always believed that mountains didn't move. But people did. They moved toward what they wanted, and they moved away from what they feared. His daughter and son-in-law had just shown him which direction they were moving. Now he needed to decide which direction he was going to move. Wallace Boone pulled his Ford pickup into Harlan's driveway at 8 in the morning, same as he had every Thursday for the past 3 months. The arrangement started after Harlan's diagnosis. Wallace would come by to check on things, maybe do some yard work or fix whatever needed fixing. It wasn't charity. Harlan paid him, and Wallace needed the money since his trucking pension didn't stretch as far as it used to. But mostly, they both needed the company. Wallace knocked once and let himself in through the front door. Harlan, coffee on. In the kitchen, came the reply. Wallace found his friend standing at the counter, already dressed for the day despite the early hour. Harlan had always been an early riser, but since the cancer, he seemed to sleep even less. Like he didn't want to waste whatever time he had left. How you feeling? Wallace asked, pouring himself coffee from a pot. Fine. You? Same as always. Too old to work, too broke to retire. Wallace grinned. What's on the list today? Harlan handed him a piece of paper with 3 items written in his careful handwriting. Gutters on east side. Light bulb in garage. Check fence gate. Easy day, Wallace said. I'll start with the gutters. Take your time. I've got some phone calls to make. Wallace nodded and headed outside. He'd been working on houses for 40 years. First as a side job when he was trucking, now as his main source of income. He liked the work. It kept his hands busy and gave him something to show for his time. He was setting up his ladder against the east side of the house when he heard a car pull into the driveway. A BMW, silver, with chrome wheels that probably cost more than Wallace made in a month. He recognized it as belonging to Harlan's daughter and her husband. Wallace climbed the ladder and started clearing leaves from the gutter, but he kept one eye on the car. Only Ramsey got out. She walked to the front door and rang the bell, even though she had a key. After a few minutes, the front door opened. Wallace couldn't hear what was being said, but he could see Harlan and Ramsey talking on the front step. Their body language didn't look right. Too formal, too careful. Then Ramsey walked back to her car and drove away, leaving Harlan standing in the doorway. Wallace climbed down and walked around to the front of the house. Everything okay? Fine, Harlan said, but his expression suggested otherwise. She forgot something yesterday. Came back to get it. Uh-huh. Wallace had known Harlan for 25 years. The man was many things: tough, stubborn, private, but he wasn't a good liar. I'll be working around back if you need me. An hour later, Wallace was in the garage changing the burned-out light bulb when he heard another car in the driveway. The BMW again, but this time both Ramsey and Cheston got out. Wallace could hear them talking as they walked to the front door. He said he'd think about it, Ramsey was saying. Thinking about it isn't good enough, Cheston replied. We need to move on this before he gets worse. He's not getting worse. He's getting better. For now. But you heard what the doctor said about recurrence rates. Wallace frowned. He'd finished with the light bulb, but he stayed in the garage, pretending to organize Harlan's tools. The front door opened and closed. Voices from inside the house, muffled but intense. Wallace couldn't make out words, but he could hear the tone. Harlan sounded calm. Cheston sounded frustrated. After about 10 minutes, the conversation seemed to end. Wallace heard the front door open again, followed by footsteps on the porch. But instead of car doors slamming, he heard the creak of the porch floorboards. Someone was still outside. Wallace crept to the garage's side window and peered through the dusty glass. Cheston was standing on the porch, looking around like he was checking to see if anyone was watching. After a moment, he walked to the front window and cupped his hand against the glass, peering inside. Then Cheston did something that made Wallace's blood run cold. He tried the front door handle. The IT was locked, of course. But Cheston walked around to the side of the house, toward the door that led from the driveway into Harlan's laundry room. Wallace heard him try that handle too. Wallace stepped out of the garage. Help you with something? Cheston jumped like he'd been shot. Oh, Wallace, I didn't see you there. I'm right here. What are you doing? I was just... Harlan asked me to check if he left his mail key outside. Sometimes he forgets to bring it in. It was a stupid lie. Harlan's mailbox was at the end of the driveway, and it didn't require a key. Just a small metal flag that you lifted to open it. Mailbox doesn't have a lock, Wallace said. Right? I meant, he was looking for his house key, in case he locked himself out. But he's inside. Cheston's face went red. Yeah, look, it doesn't matter. We found what we were looking for. He walked quickly back to the BMW, where Ramsey was waiting in the passenger seat with the engine running. Wallace watched them drive away, then walked to the front door and knocked. It's me, he said. Harlan opened the door immediately. They gone. Yeah, but Harlan, that son-in-law of yours was trying your door handles, looking in your windows, acting like he was casing the place. Harlan's jaw tightened. You sure? Dead sure. I caught him red-handed. He made up some story about looking for keys, but it didn't make sense. Harlan nodded slowly. Come in. I need to show you something. They walked to Harlan's home office, a small room off the main hallway that he used for paperwork. His desk was an old oak piece he'd bought at a garage sale 20 years ago, with drawers that locked and a file cabinet that matched. On top of the desk was an open manila folder. I keep my important papers in that file cabinet, Harlan said. When they were here yesterday, I noticed something was different. Not missing, just different. Like someone had gone through it and tried to put everything back exactly where it was, but didn't get it quite right. Wallace whistled low. They were in your files? That's what I thought, but I couldn't prove it. Harlan walked to his computer, an older desktop model that he used mainly for email and checking the weather. Until now. He clicked on an icon on the desktop labeled Security. A window opened showing multiple camera feeds from around the property. Wallace hadn't even known Harlan had cameras. Installed them last month, Harlan said. Figured it was smart, living alone. He clicked on one of the feeds, and a larger window opened showing footage from inside the house. The timestamp showed yesterday's date. On the screen, Wallace could see Ramsey and Cheston in Harlan's living room. Harlan was there too, getting up from his chair and walking toward the kitchen. The camera angle showed the hallway that led to the bedrooms and office. After Harlan disappeared into the kitchen, Cheston looked around quickly, then got up and walked down the hallway. He went straight to the office. Son of a bitch, Wallace said out on screen. Cheston opened the file cabinet and started going through folders. He used his phone to take pictures of documents. When he heard Harlan coming back, He quickly closed the cabinet and walked back to the living room, sitting down just as Harlan appeared with a coffee pot. He was in there for maybe 3 minutes, Harlan said. Long enough to photograph anything important. What kind of documents you got in there? Bank statements, insurance papers, the deed to the house. Nothing that shows the real picture, but enough to give them ideas. Wallace shook his head. What are you going to do? Harlan was quiet for a long moment. I'm going to call my lawyer. And then I'm going to make sure they never get another chance to do this again. You want me to stick around today? In case they come back? No, but I appreciate the offer. Harlan ejected a USB drive from the computer and slipped it into his pocket. I've got some calls to make. After Wallace left, Harlan sat in his office, staring at the file cabinet. 30 years of building a business, of saving money, of planning for the future. And his own daughter was trying to steal it from him. Not steal exactly. She probably told herself she was just looking out for him, making sure he was okay, checking on his affairs. But Harlan knew the difference between concern and greed. He'd seen both in his lifetime, and they didn't look anything alike. He picked up his phone and dialed Carla Sutton's direct number. Carla, it's Harlan West. I need to see you today. It's urgent. What's wrong? I need to make sure my affairs are bulletproof. And I need to know what happens if someone tries to challenge them. There was a pause on the other end. Harlan, is someone pressuring you? Let's just say I want to be prepared for all possibilities. I can see you at 2 o'clock. I'll be there. Harlan hung up and opened his notebook. He wrote, Thursday, C caught snooping outside house by W. Security footage shows C photographing documents from file cabinet. Calling lawyer. Then he closed the notebook and put it in his pocket. From now on, it would stay with him. Carla Sutton's law office occupied the second floor of a brick building in downtown Bend, with windows that looked out over the Deschutes River. She'd been practicing law for 38 years, first as a prosecutor, then as a judge, and finally as a private attorney specializing in estates and elder law. Her office walls were lined with books and certificates, but what clients remembered most was her directness. Carla didn't waste words or time. Show me the footage, she said after Harlan finished explaining the situation. Harlan plugged the USB drive into her computer. They watched the security footage together, Cheston prowling through the house, photographing documents, lying to Wallace about his reasons for being outside. This is attempted financial exploitation, Carla said when the footage ended. It's a felony in Oregon if they follow through on it. What constitutes following through? Trying to get access to your accounts. Attempting to get power of attorney through fraud or coercion. Using information they obtained illegally to make financial decisions on your behalf. Harlan nodded. What if they try to have me declared incompetent? Based on what? You just sold a business for $8 million and structured it through trust. Your oncologist says you're in remission. You're lucid, you're making rational decisions, and you have documentation of everything. Carla leaned back in her chair. But I'm concerned about their next move, which will be they're going to escalate. Right now, they're fishing for information. When they don't find what they're looking for in your files, they're going to try a different approach. More direct pressure. Let them try. Harlan, these kinds of situations can get ugly fast. Family members can say terrible things to each other when money is involved. Are you prepared for that? Harlan thought about his daughter as a little girl, riding on his shoulders at the county fair. Then he thought about her husband going through his private papers. I'm prepared, he said. The call came that evening while Harlan was watching the news. Ramsey's voice sounded strained. Dad, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. About you living alone. What about it? I'm really worried. Not just about your health, but about your safety. That neighborhood isn't as safe as it used to be. Harlan's neighborhood was one of the safest in Bend, full of retirees and young families. The most exciting crime in the past year had been someone stealing packages off doorsteps. It's plenty safe, he said, but what if something happened? What if someone broke in while you were sleeping? You wouldn't be able to defend yourself, not after everything you've been through. I can take care of myself. I know you think you can, but Dad, be realistic. You've lost weight, you're not as strong as you used to be. And if you had to call for help, would you even be able to get to the phone in time? There was something in her voice that hadn't been there before. Urgency, almost desperation. Ramsey, what's going on? What do you mean? This sudden concern about my safety. Yesterday, it was my finances. Today, it's home invasion. Tomorrow, it'll be something else. What are you really worried about? A long pause. I'm worried about you, Dad. Is that so hard to believe? No, but I'm also not stupid. I never said you were stupid. Then stop treating me like I am. Another pause, longer this time. Cheston and I talked to a real estate agent, she said finally. About your house. You what? Not to sell it. Just to get an idea of what it's worth. For insurance purposes. And Dad, it's worth a lot more than you probably think. How much? Almost $600,000. Maybe more, depending on the market. Harlan wasn't surprised. He bought the house for $80,000 in 1991, and Ben's real estate market had exploded in the past decade. But he was surprised that Ramsey and Cheston had gone to the trouble of getting an appraisal. That's a lot of money just sitting there, Ramsey continued. Money you could be using to make your life easier. You could sell the house, move in with us, and have hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend on healthcare, travel, whatever you want. I don't want to travel, and I don't want to move in with you. But think about it practically, Dad. You're sitting on this huge asset, and you're not getting any benefit from it. Meanwhile, you're paying property taxes, maintenance costs, insurance. It's like throwing money away. It's my money to throw away. But it doesn't have to be. If you sold the house and invested that money properly, you could be earning $50,000 or $60,000 a year just from the returns. That's more than some people make working full-time. Harlan understood now. They thought the house was his only major asset. $600,000 seemed like a fortune to people who were living paycheck to paycheck, even if those paychecks came from cryptocurrency speculation and real estate deals that never materialized. I'll think about it, he said. Really? I said I'll think about it. That's great, Dad. That's really great. And while you're thinking about it, maybe we could set up that financial consultation I mentioned, just to get a professional opinion on your options. Maybe. I could set it up for next week. No pressure, just information. I said maybe, Ramsey. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just excited that you're open to considering it. Her voice was bright now, relieved. This could be really good for you, Dad. For all of us. After she hung up, Harlan sat in his recliner and thought about what she'd said. For all of us. Not just for him. For all of them. He pulled out his notebook and wrote. Are called about selling house. Thinks it's my main asset. Wants financial consultation. Pressure increasing. Then he walked to his front window and looked out at the street. His house was modest compared to some in the neighborhood, but it was solid, well built, paid for. It had been his and Ellen's home for over 30 years, the place where they'd raised Ramsey, the place where Ellen had died. Selling it would be like selling his history. But keeping it might cost him his future. The Harlan's appointment with Dr. Patricia Martinez was routine blood work, scans, the usual post-treatment monitoring that would continue for the next 5 years. But sitting in the oncology waiting room, surrounded by people fighting the same battle he'd fought, Harlan felt something he hadn't expected, gratitude. Not for surviving cancer that was still too raw, too uncertain. Gratitude for clarity. The disease had stripped away everything non-essential and left him with a clear view of what mattered and what didn't. What was real and what was performance. His family's sudden interest in his welfare was performance. Mr. West, a nurse called his name. Dr. Martinez will see you now. The appointment went well. His blood work was clean, his scans showed no signs of recurrence, and his weight had stabilized. Dr. Martinez, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, seemed pleased. You're doing everything right, she said. Diet, exercise, follow-up care. How are you feeling mentally? Sometimes patients struggle with anxiety after treatment. I'm fine. Any family support? I know you live alone. My daughter checks on me. Dr. Martinez nodded and made a note in his file. That's good. Family support is important during recovery. Are you comfortable with your current living situation? Very comfortable. Good. I'll see you again in 3 months. Keep doing what you're doing. Harlan left the medical center feeling lighter than he had in weeks. But the feeling faded as he drove home and saw the silver BMW in his driveway. Ramsey and Cheston were sitting on his front porch, waiting. They stood up as he parked his truck. How did the appointment go? Ramsey asked before he'd even gotten out of the vehicle. Fine. What did the doctor say? That I'm fine. Cheston stepped forward. Harlan, We brought someone we'd like you to meet. A financial advisor. Really smart guy. Specializes in helping people in your situation. What situation is that? You know, people who are facing uncertain health outcomes. People who need to make sure their affairs are in order. A third person emerged from the BMW's backseat. A man in his 40s, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He carried a leather briefcase and walked with the confidence of someone who made money by convincing other people to give him theirs. Mr. West, the man said, extending his hand. I'm David Kellner. I specialize in estate planning and wealth preservation for clients in transition. Harlan didn't shake the hand. I didn't ask for a consultation. Of course not. Your daughter and son-in-law are just looking out for your best interests. They're concerned that you might not be taking full advantage of your financial opportunities. What opportunities? Well, for starters, your home equity. $600,000 in an asset that's not generating any income. We could help you unlock that value while still allowing you to live comfortably. How? A reverse mortgage for one option. You could stay in your home and receive monthly payments based on the equity. Or we could help you find a nice retirement community, something with medical facilities on-site, and invest the proceeds from your home sale. David Kellner opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder thick with documents. I prepared some preliminary projections based on the information your family provided. If you invested the proceeds from your home sale conservatively, you could generate $40,000 to $50,000 a year in income. More aggressively, and you could double that. What information did my family provide? Kellner glanced at Ramsey and Cheston. Basic financial information. Your approximate assets, your monthly expenses. Nothing detailed, of course. What approximate assets? Your home equity, your savings accounts, any investments or retirement funds you might have. Harlan looked at his daughter. You told him about my finances? Dad, I only told him what I thought he needed to know to help you. Which was what exactly? Ramsey's face went red. I don't know your exact financial situation. I was just guessing based on what I thought you might have saved over the years. So you made up numbers. I estimated, based on reasonable assumptions. What reasonable assumptions? Cheston jumped in. Look, the point isn't the exact numbers. The point is that you have assets that could be working harder for you. David here is a professional. He can help you maximize your financial security. Harlan looked at David Kellner. How much do you charge for this help? Our fee structure is very reasonable. 1% of assets under management annually, plus small transaction fees for trading. 1% of what assets? Whatever you decide to place under our management. Your investment portfolio, proceeds from asset sales, that sort of thing. And if I don't have any assets to manage? Kellner's smile faltered slightly. Well, everyone has some assets. Your home equity alone represents significant wealth. Harlan nodded slowly. I appreciate you coming out here, Mr. Kellner, but I'm not interested. Perhaps you'd like to review the projections first? I think you'll find them quite compelling. I said I'm not interested. Kellner looked at Ramsey and Cheston, clearly expecting them to help convince their stubborn relative. When they said nothing, he packed up his briefcase. If you change your mind, Mr. West, please don't hesitate to call. Estate planning isn't something you should put off indefinitely. After Kellner left, Harlan faced his daughter and son-in-law on his front porch. That was embarrassing, Cheston said. We bring you a professional who could help you, and you won't even listen to what he has to say. I listened. I wasn't impressed. Dad, Ramsey said, we're trying to help you. We're trying to make sure you're prepared for whatever happens. What do you think is going to happen? We don't know. That's the point. But if your health gets worse, or if you need specialized care, or if there's some kind of emergency, you need to have your finances organized. You need to have people you trust who can help you make decisions. People I trust. Yes, like you and Cheston. We are family, Dad. Who else would you trust? Harlan looked at his daughter, this woman who'd brought a stranger to his home to discuss his personal finances without asking his permission. This woman who'd been going through his private papers and taking photographs of his documents. I'll manage my own finances, he said, like I always have. But what if you can't? Cheston asked. What if the cancer comes back and affects your thinking? What if you have a stroke? What if you develop dementia? Then I'll deal with it when it happens. It might be too late then, Ramsey said. If you're not mentally competent, You can't make legal decisions about your money. Someone else would have to do it for you. Wouldn't you rather choose who that someone is? There was again the hook. I'll think about it, Harlan said. After they left, Harlan went inside and called Carla Sutton. They brought a financial advisor to my house, he told her, without asking me first. What kind of financial advisor? The kind who charges 1% of assets under management. They wanted me to give him control of my money so he could invest it and take a cut. Classic exploitation pattern. They're trying to get you to consolidate your assets under their friend's management, which would give them access and influence. What's my next move? Make it impossible for them to succeed. Transfer your home into the trust immediately. Set up the beneficiary structure we discussed. Create a paper trail that shows you're making rational, informed decisions while you're clearly competent. Do it. Harlan, once we do this, there's no going back. If you change your mind about your daughter, I won't. Family relationships are complicated. Money makes them more complicated. Are you absolutely sure about this? Harlan thought about Ramsey as a child, begging him to read her one more story before bed. Then he thought about her adult voice saying, for all of us, when she talked about his money. I'm sure. That afternoon, Harlan drove to Carla's office and signed the papers that transferred his house into West Ridge Holdings. He also signed documents that formally named Esri Moreno as the primary beneficiary of the trust. Esri was Ellen's nephew, 32 years old, working 2 jobs while taking night classes in accounting. He'd been close to Ellen, had stayed in touch with Harlan after her death, and had never asked for anything beyond an occasional reference letter or advice about his career. When Harlan called to tell him about the trust, Esri was quiet for a long moment. Uncle Harlan, I don't understand. Why me? Because you remind me of myself at your age. Working hard, not making excuses, not asking for handouts. But what about Ramsey? What about her? She's your daughter. Yes, she is. Esri seemed to understand that there was more to the story, but he didn't push. What does this mean exactly? For me, it means you'll inherit the business assets when I die. It also means you'll help me manage some projects while I'm alive, if you're interested. What kind of projects? I'm thinking about setting up a training program for veterans who want to get into logistics. Something that gives them real skills and job placement assistance. You interested in helping run something like that? Yes, absolutely. Good. We'll start small and see how it goes. After the call, Harlan sat in his office and updated his notebook. House transferred to trust. Moreno named primary beneficiary. Training program idea discussed. Then he opened a new page and wrote, next phase, wait for them to make their move. The call came on a Sunday morning while Harlan was reading the newspaper on his back deck. Cheston's voice was different, sharper, more urgent than usual. Harlan, we need to talk. Today. About what? About your future. About making sure you're protected. Protected from what? Just, can we come over? This isn't something we should discuss on the phone. They arrived 30 minutes later, but they weren't alone. The silver BMW was followed by a black sedan that parked across the street. 2 men in suits got out and waited by their car. Harlan watched from his front window as Ramsey and Cheston walked up his driveway. Behind them came a third man, tall, thin, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a briefcase. Harlan didn't recognize him, but he could guess who he was. The doorbell rang. Dad, it's us, Ramsey called. We have someone with us. Harlan opened the door. I can see that. This is Stan Lerner, Cheston said, gesturing to the man with the briefcase. He's an attorney who specializes in elder law and estate planning. I didn't ask for an attorney. Mr. West, Stan Lerner said, stepping forward with a professional smile. I understand you've been dealing with some health challenges. Your family is concerned about making sure you have proper legal protection in place. What kind of protection? The kind that ensures your wishes are respected and your assets are preserved, regardless of what happens to your health in the future. Harlan looked past them to the black sedan across the street. Who are your friends? Witnesses, Lerner said. For the legal documents we'll be signing today. What legal documents? Ramsey put her hand on his arm. Dad, we've been thinking about what you said, about wanting to manage your own affairs. And we respect that. But we also want to make sure you have a backup plan. What kind of backup plan? Cheston opened a folder and pulled out several sheets of paper. Just some basic legal protections. A healthcare directive, a limited power of attorney, some simple estate planning documents. Nothing that takes away your control, just things that help you if you need help. I don't need help. Of course not, Lerner said smoothly. These documents don't go into effect unless you're unable to make decisions for yourself. They're just insurance policies. Let me see them. Lerner handed him the papers. Harlan read the first page, a power of attorney document that would give Ramsey and Cheston joint authority over his financial and healthcare decisions if he was declared incapacitated. The second page was a healthcare directive that designated them as his primary decision makers in medical emergencies. The third page was an amendment to his will, redistributing his assets according to a new structure that put everything into a family trust managed by Ramsey and Cheston. These aren't backup plans, Harlan said. These are takeovers. Dad, that's not fair, Ramsey said. We're trying to protect you. From what? From people who might try to take advantage of you. From making bad decisions if your health gets worse. From losing everything you worked for to medical bills or scam artists. Or from making decisions you don't like. Cheston stepped forward. Look, Harlan, let's be honest here. You're 64 years old. You just had cancer. The doctors say it might come back. Even if it doesn't, you're not going to live forever. Thanks for the reminder. The point is, you need to start thinking about what happens to your assets when you're gone. And more importantly, you need to make sure those assets are protected while you're still here. Protected how? Professional management. Legal structures that can't be challenged. People you trust making sure your money is being handled properly. Stan Lerner pulled a pen from his jacket pocket. Mr. West, I've reviewed your current situation, and frankly, you're vulnerable. Your assets aren't properly protected. Your estate planning is outdated. If something happened to you tomorrow, your family could be tied up in probate court for years. You've reviewed my situation? How? Lerner glanced at Cheston. Your family provided me with some basic financial information to help me prepare these documents. What information? Your approximate net worth, your major assets, your monthly expenses. Standard information needed for estate planning. Harlan set the papers down on his coffee table. I need time to think about this. Dad, Ramsey said, we've already thought about it. We've done the research. We've consulted with professionals. We've looked at all the options. These documents are the best way to protect your interests. My interests or yours? Both. What's good for you is good for us. We're family. Harlan looked at the papers again. The power of attorney was comprehensive. It would give them control over his bank accounts, his investments, his property transactions, even his healthcare decisions. The will amendment would essentially undo all the work he'd done with Carla Sutton. I noticed these documents don't mention my current estate planning. Lerner frowned. What current estate planning? My will, my trust, my existing legal arrangements. Mr. West, do you have existing estate planning documents? Of course I do. Recent documents. Very recent. Lerner's professional smile faltered. I wasn't made aware of any existing estate planning. These documents are designed to replace any previous arrangements. Without consulting my current attorney. Who is your current attorney? Carla Sutton. The room went quiet. Everyone in Ben's legal community knew Carla Sutton's reputation. She wasn't someone whose work you tried to undo casually. Perhaps, Lerner said carefully, we should contact Ms. Sutton and coordinate our efforts. Perhaps you should leave. Dad, Ramsey said quickly, you don't have to decide right now. But think about what we're offering. Security, professional management, people who care about you, making sure you're taken care of. I'm taken care of, for now. But what about next month? Next year? What if your health changes? What if you need specialized care that costs thousands of dollars a month? I'll handle it. With what money? Cheston asked bluntly. Your trucking company is gone. Your house is worth something, but not enough to pay for long-term medical care. What other assets do you have? The question hung in the air. Harlan could see the calculation in their eyes. They thought they knew his financial situation. They thought he was a retired trucker with a house and maybe some savings, comfortable, but not wealthy. They were trying to position themselves as his financial saviors. I'll manage, he said. Harlan, Stan Lerner said, I have to advise you that delaying these decisions could be costly. Estate planning laws are complex, and the longer you wait, the fewer options you'll have. I'll take that risk. Lerner packed up his papers. I'll leave copies of these documents for you to review. When you're ready to move forward, just call me. After they left, Harlan sat in his living room and stared at the legal documents on his coffee table. Everything they proposed would have given them complete control over his life and his money. If he'd signed those papers, he would have been their puppet. The scary thing was how reasonable they'd made it sound. Professional management, legal protection, family cooperation, all the right buzzwords wrapped around what amounted to a legal theft. He picked up his phone and called Carla Sutton. They brought a lawyer to my house with pre-drafted papers, he told her. Power of attorney, healthcare directive, will amendment. The works. What did you tell them? That I needed time to think about it. Good. Don't sign anything. In fact, I think it's time to accelerate our timeline. Meaning we need to make it clear that you're not a confused old man who can be manipulated. We need to show them that you're several steps ahead of them. How do we do that? Family meeting. Your terms, your house, your agenda. Time to show them what they're really dealing with. Harlan smiled. When? Next Sunday. Give them a week to think they're making progress. Then drop the bomb. After the call, Harlan updated his notebook. Lerner brought documents for complete financial takeover. Refused to sign. CS recommends family meeting next Sunday. Then he walked to his back deck and looked out at the mountains. The sun was setting behind the peaks, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded him of the truck stop sunrises he'd watched during his driving days. Back then, he'd always known where he was going and how long it would take to get there. This journey was different, but the destination was becoming clearer. He was going to teach his family the difference between inheritance and theft. And the lesson was going to start next Sunday. Sunday dinner at Harlan's house had been a family tradition when Ellen was alive. She'd spend the morning cooking, the afternoon setting the table, and the evening making sure everyone felt welcome and loved. After her death, the dinners had stopped. There was no one to organize them, no one to insist that family was more important than individual plans. But this Sunday was different. Harlan had called everyone personally. Ramsey and Cheston, of course. His younger brother Dale and Dale's wife Monica, who lived an hour away in Redmond. His nephew Kevin, Ramsey's cousin, who worked at the lumber mill and rarely socialized. Even Wallace, who wasn't family by blood, but had earned his place at the table through loyalty and honest work. They arrived at 1 o'clock as requested, parking their various vehicles in Harlan's driveway and along the street. Ramsey brought a salad and wore the kind of dress you wore when you wanted to make a good impression. Cheston carried a bottle of wine and looked nervous. Dale and Monica brought flowers. Kevin brought his appetite and his curiosity about why he'd been invited. Wallace arrived last, carrying a toolbox. What's the toolbox for? Ramsey asked as everyone gathered in the living room. Harlan asked me to bring it, Wallace said. Didn't say why. The living room felt crowded with 8 people, but Harlan had arranged the furniture carefully. His recliner faced the couch where Ramsey and Cheston sat. Dale and Monica took the love seat. Kevin and Wallace pulled up chairs from the dining room. Everyone could see everyone else, and everyone could see the large television mounted on the wall. Thanks for coming, Harlan said, standing next to his laptop, which was connected to the television. I know Sunday dinners haven't been the same since Ellen passed, but I thought it was time we brought them back. That's wonderful, Dad, Ramsey said. We've missed this. Before we eat, I want to share something with all of you. A little family history project I've been working on. He clicked a button on his laptop, and the television screen came alive with an old photograph. It showed a young Harlan standing next to his first truck, a 1985 Kenworth with more rust than paint. The photo was faded, but his pride was evident. This is where it all started, Harlan said. West Logistics. One truck, one driver, one dream of building something that would last. The next slide showed more trucks, newer ones, parked in a lot with West Logistics painted on a sign. Then photos of the office building Harlan had eventually bought, the warehouse he'd leased, the employees who'd worked for him over the years. 34 years, Harlan continued. From one truck to a fleet of 47. From sleeping in truck stops to owning a business that employed 68 people at its peak. Dale nodded approvingly. You built something to be proud of, Harlan. I did, and I want to share with all of you how that story ended. The next slide was a document. A sales agreement, dated 3 months earlier, showing the sale of West Logistics to a California-based transportation company for $8.20 million. The room went silent. Ramsey's face went white. Dad, is this real? Very real. Signed, sealed, and deposited. Cheston leaned forward, staring at the screen. You sold the company? When? Why didn't you tell us? I sold it right after my cancer diagnosis. As for why I didn't tell you. Harlan clicked to the next slide. Let me show you. The screen now showed an audio file interface. Harlan hit play. Cheston's voice filled the room, crystal clear. He's practically dead already. The cancer might not get him this time, but something will. We need to position ourselves before he gets worse. Then Ramsey's voice. He won't remember signing anything if we wait too long. The chemo affects their memory. Then Cheston again. The important thing is getting control of the assets before someone else does. Family services, the state, whoever. Once we have power of attorney, we can manage everything properly. The audio stopped. The room was dead, quiet. Ramsey's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Cheston's face had gone from pale to bright red. Dad, Ramsey whispered. Where did you get that? From your visit 2 weeks ago. I record all my conversations now. For medical reasons, of course. Memory issues, you understand. Harlan clicked to the next slide. It was a video feed from a security system showing Cheston in his office, going through the file cabinet and photographing documents with his phone. This is from last week. While I was making coffee for my guests, one of those guests was burglarizing my private papers. Now wait just a minute, Cheston said, standing up. That's not burglary. I was concerned about your organization, your record keeping. I was trying to help. Help yourself to what? Help you organize your affairs. By taking pictures of my private documents without my permission. I didn't take anything. You took photographs of documents that didn't belong to you. In most states, that's a felony. Wallace opened his toolbox and pulled out a manila folder. Harlan asked me to do some research, he said. Turns out Oregon takes elder financial abuse pretty seriously, especially when there's evidence of planning and coordination. He handed the folder to Dale, who opened it and read the first page. This is a complaint with the Oregon Department of Human Services, Dale said, filed against Ramsey and Cheston for attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. I'm not vulnerable, Harlan said, but I wanted to see how far you'd go before you realized that. Ramsey found her voice. Dad, you don't understand. We were trying to protect you. We were worried about your health, your ability to manage your finances, my ability to manage $8.2 million. The number hit the room like a physical blow. Kevin whistled low. Monica put her hand over her mouth. Dale shook his head in amazement. $8 million, Ramsey said faintly, plus the proceeds from the house, which is now worth about $600,000. Plus my savings, investments, and other assets. All told, we're talking about close to $10 million. Harlan clicked to the next slide, which showed the legal structure of West Ridge Holdings Trust. All of it held in a family trust that I established 6 months ago. All of it protected by legal documents that can't be challenged, can't be manipulated, and can't be accessed by anyone except the named beneficiary. Who's the beneficiary? Cheston asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Harlan clicked again. The screen now showed a photograph of a young man in work clothes, smiling at the camera. It was Esri Moreno. Meet the sole heir to the West family fortune, Harlan said. Esri Moreno, Ellen's nephew. Currently working 2 jobs while finishing his accounting degree. Never asked me for a dime, never suggested I needed help managing my affairs. Never went through my private papers looking for information to use against me. Ramsey began crying. Dad, please. You can't do this. I'm your daughter. Yes, you are. And for 35 years, I loved you more than my own life. I would have given you anything you needed, helped you with anything you wanted, supported any dream you had. Then why are you doing this to me? I'm not doing anything to you. I'm doing something for someone who deserves it. But we're family. Harlan looked at her with eyes that held no warmth, no forgiveness, no trace of the father who used to read her bedtime stories. You stopped being family the day you decided my money was more important than my life. The day you brought strangers into my home to discuss my finances without my permission. The day you tried to trick me into signing away my independence. He clicked to the final slide, which showed the current date and a simple message. West Ridge Holdings Trust irrevocable and final. Every asset, every dollar, every piece of property is now beyond your reach. The house you're sitting in, owned by the trust. The bank accounts you've been trying to access, controlled by the trust. The inheritance you've been planning for, gone to someone who earned it. Cheston stood up abruptly. This isn't over. We'll fight this. We'll prove you're not competent to make these decisions. With what evidence? I just sold a business for $8 million and structured the proceeds through a legally sound trust. I identified and documented attempts to exploit me financially. I consulted with attorneys, created detailed records, and made rational decisions to protect my assets. What part of that suggests incompetence? Stan Lerner had prepared them for this possibility, but they hadn't believed it could happen. Old people were supposed to be confused, frightened, easily manipulated. They weren't supposed to be 3 steps ahead. You recorded our private conversations without our knowledge, Cheston said. That's illegal. No, it's not. Oregon is a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of without informing the other parties. You entrapped us. I gave you every opportunity to show me who you really were. You chose to show me greed instead of love. Ramsey wiped her eyes and tried one more approach. Dad, I know we made mistakes. I know we handled this wrong. But please, think about what you're doing. Think about your grandchildren. Think about our future. I am thinking about the future. Esri's future. He's going to use this money to build something meaningful. A training program for veterans, job placement services, educational opportunities. Something that helps people instead of just making rich people richer. What about us? What about our children's college funds, our mortgage, your problems, your choices, your consequences? Harlan closed his laptop and unplugged it from the television. Dinner is canceled. I think you all need to leave. Dale and Monica stood up first, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama they'd witnessed. Kevin followed, shaking his head. Wallace packed up his toolbox without being asked. Uncle Harlan, Kevin said quietly, I'm sorry about all this. Ellen would be proud of what you did for her nephew. After the others left, Ramsey and Cheston remained on the couch, looking stunned. Dad, Ramsey said one more time, please don't do this. Please don't destroy our family over money. Harlan looked at his daughter, this woman he'd raised, who'd grown up to value his bank account more than his life. I'm not destroying our family, he said. I'm just refusing to let you rob me. The legal threat came Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who looked embarrassed to be part of whatever drama he was facilitating. Harlan signed for the envelope and opened it at his kitchen table while his coffee was still hot. The letter was from Stan Lerner's law firm, demanding that Harlan cease and desist from any further asset transfers and threatening legal action for elder abuse through isolation and financial manipulation. It accused him of making irrational decisions while mentally compromised by recent medical treatment and suggested that his actions constituted a clear danger to his own welfare and that of his family. Harlan read it twice, then called Carla Sutton. They're trying to flip the script, he told her after reading the letter aloud. Now I'm the one exploiting myself. Standard desperation move. When the direct approach fails, they try to paint you as the problem. How do you want to respond? Aggressively. I was hoping you'd say that. Carla's response came the same day, hand-delivered to Stan Lerner's office by her own courier. It was a comprehensive document that did 3 things. First, it provided evidence of Harlan's mental competence, including recent medical evaluations, his successful business sale, and his sophisticated estate planning. Second, it documented Ramsey and Cheston's attempts at financial exploitation, including the recorded conversations, security footage, and witness statements from Wallace Boone. Third, it informed Lerner that his clients were under investigation by multiple agencies for elder abuse, and that any further harassment of Mr. West would result in additional charges. The letter also included a copy of the formal complaint Harlan had filed with the Oregon Elder Abuse Unit, a division of the Department of Human Services that took financial exploitation seriously. The complaint outlined everything. The snooping, the recorded conversations, the attempted power of attorney fraud, the coordinated effort to gain control of his assets. Within 24 hours, Stan Lerner called Carla directly. "My clients were acting out of genuine concern for Mr. West's welfare," he said. "Perhaps we can work out some kind of arrangement that addresses everyone's interests." "Your clients were attempting to defraud a cancer survivor," Carla replied. "The only arrangement I'm interested in is the one where they leave him alone. Mr. West is making decisions that harm his own family. Surely there's room for compromise. Mr. West is making decisions about his own money. That's what competent adults do." But cutting off his daughter completely. His daughter cut herself off when she decided to rob him. The investigation moved quickly. Elder abuse cases got priority in Oregon, especially when they involved clear documentation and witness testimony. Within a week, investigators had interviewed Wallace, reviewed the security footage, and examined the evidence of Ramsey and Cheston's planning. The social consequences came even faster. Bend was a small city where reputation mattered, especially in the suburban development where Ramsey and Cheston lived. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood networks, the school committees, the social circles where people knew each other's business. That IT started with the HOA meeting where Ramsey served as treasurer. Someone asked a question about the elderly residents in the community and whether they were adequately protected from financial predators. The conversation that followed was pointed and uncomfortable, with several board members expressing concern about having someone under investigation for elder abuse in a position of financial authority. Ramsey resigned from the board that night. Next came the school fundraising committee, where she'd been organizing the annual auction. Parents who'd previously been friendly became distant. Conversations stopped when she entered a room. Phone calls weren't returned. Cheston's cryptocurrency consulting business, such as it was, dried up entirely. His few clients found other advisors. His networking contacts stopped responding to emails. When your reputation was built on trust and your business was managing other people's money, being investigated for financial exploitation was a career-ending diagnosis. The BMW disappeared from their driveway, replaced by an older Honda. The lawn service was canceled. The family vacation to Hawaii was quietly called off. 3 weeks after the Sunday dinner confrontation, Ramsey called Harlan. "Dad, I know you're angry with me. I know we hurt you. But please, we're losing everything. The investigation is ruining our lives. People won't talk to us. Cheston can't find work. We might lose the house. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Are you really sorry? Or is this what you wanted?" Harlan thought about the question. Was this what he'd wanted? He'd wanted them to leave him alone. He'd wanted them to face consequences for their actions. He'd wanted them to understand that trying to rob him was a serious crime with serious results. "I wanted you to learn the difference between right and wrong," he said. "If that's ruining your life, maybe your life needed to be ruined. Dad, please, can't we work something out? Can't we find some way to fix this? You want to fix it? Yes. Please. Stop the legal challenges. Drop the threats. Accept that you made choices and choices have consequences. But what about our future? What about the children's college funds? Not my problem. You're their grandfather. Yes, I am. And they have a mother and father who are responsible for providing for them, just like I provided for you. But we can't. You can't what? Work harder? Spend less? Live within your means? Make sacrifices for your children like every other parent in the world." Silence on the other end. "Dad, we made mistakes, but we're still your family." "No, you're my family. Now you're just people I used to know who try to steal from me." 6 months later, Harlan stood in the parking lot of a converted warehouse in East Bend, watching his workers installed the sign above the front entrance. West Veterans Training Center, a program of West Ridge Holdings. The building had been a furniture store until the owner retired and couldn't find a buyer. Harlan had bought it through the trust and spent 3 months converting it into a training facility. Classroom space for 40 students, a workshop area for hands-on learning, offices for staff and counselors, even a small cafeteria where students could eat lunch and network with each other. Esri stood beside him, clipboard in hand, checking items off a seemingly endless list of opening day preparations. "Enrollment is full for the first session," Esri said. 28 veterans signed up for the logistics program, 12 for the business management track. We have a waiting list for the second session. Good. What about job placement? 14 companies have committed to hiring our graduates. 3 of them want to set up permanent recruitment programs. Harlan nodded. The training center was his answer to everyone who'd ever suggested he didn't know what to do with his money. Instead of letting financial advisors skim percentages off investment portfolios, he was investing directly in people. Veterans who needed skills, employers who needed trained workers, communities that needed economic development. The IT felt like building something again, the way trucking had felt in the early days when every new route was a victory and every satisfied customer was proof that hard work mattered. Wallace walked out of the building carrying a toolbox, his role as facility manager keeping him busy 6 days a week. At 57, he'd found purpose again, managing the physical plant and mentoring students who reminded him of his younger self. HVAC system is running smooth, he reported. Computers are all set up and tested. Coffee machine in the break room is working, which might be the most important thing of all. Harlan smiled. Opening day is Monday. Monday morning at 8 sharp. Esri confirmed. You want to say a few words to the first class? I'll leave the speeches to you. This is your show now. It was true. Over the past 6 months, Esri. It was true. Over the past 6 months, Esri had proved himself capable of running the operation day to day, while Harlan provided guidance and resources. The younger man had a natural talent for organization and a genuine care for the veterans they were serving. He understood that the training center wasn't charity, it was an investment in people who'd served their country and deserved a chance to build civilian careers. Any word from your family? Wallace asked quietly. Harlan shook his head. The investigation was closed last month. No criminal charges, but they're both on a state registry for financial exploitation attempts. Ramsey sent a letter. You read it. The first line. Then I burned it. Wallace nodded. He'd been there the day the letter arrived, had seen Harlan take it directly from the mailbox to the fire pit in his backyard. Whatever Ramsey had written, whatever apologies or explanations or pleas for forgiveness it contained, they'd gone up in smoke without being heard. Any regrets? Esri asked. Harlan thought about the question. Did he regret losing his relationship with his daughter? Did he regret the grandchildren he might never see again? Did he regret the family dinners that would never happen? The holidays that would be spent alone? No, he said. No regrets. Because the alternative would have been worse. The alternative would have been spending his remaining years as their puppet, watching them squander money he'd spent a lifetime earning while pretending they were doing it for his own good. The alternative would have been dying slowly while they picked his bones clean, telling themselves they were the victims of an ungrateful old man who didn't appreciate their help. The only thing I regret is that it took me so long to see who they really were. A truck pulled into the parking lot, a delivery vehicle, bringing the last of the office furniture for the training center. Harlan watched the driver back up to the loading dock, executing a perfect reverse maneuver that spoke of years of experience and professional pride. That driver reminded him of himself at 30, hungry for work and willing to earn it. Maybe that driver had family who supported his ambitions, or maybe he had family who saw him as a source of income. Maybe he had people who loved him for who he was, or maybe he had people who loved him for what he could provide. The difference, Harlan had learned, was the difference between family and predators. The training center would help people like that driver build better lives for themselves and their real families. It would give them skills, connections, and opportunities they could earn through effort instead of manipulation. It would be Harlan's legacy, not the money he'd accumulated, but the lives he'd helped change. As the truck driver finished his delivery and drove away, Harlan felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the peace of resignation, but the peace of completion. He'd built something that would outlast him, something that honored the values Ellen had taught him and the lessons he'd learned from a lifetime of hard work. 3 months later, Harlan sat in his sunroom on a rainy Tuesday morning, listening to John Coltrane on his old stereo and reading the quarterly report from the training center. 47 veterans had completed their programs, and 43 had found jobs. The success stories filled 3 pages. A former Marine who'd become a logistics coordinator for a regional trucking company, an Air Force veteran who'd started her own freight brokerage, a Navy corpsman who'd used his business training to open a medical equipment supply company. The rain drummed against the windows, a steady rhythm that reminded him of truck tires on wet asphalt. Outside, his yard was green, and well-maintained Wallace still came by twice a week to keep things in order, though he lived comfortably now on his salary from the training center that Harlan's cancer remained in remission. His last checkup had been clean, his energy was good, and his doctor had started using words like full recovery instead of cautious optimism. He might have 10 more years, or 20, or 30. However much time he had, it would be lived on his own terms. The mailbox at the end of his driveway contained the usual assortment of bills, advertisements, and newsletters. But today, there was something else, a hand-addressed envelope with familiar handwriting. Ramsey's handwriting. Harlan carried the letter inside and set it on his kitchen counter while he made fresh coffee. He stared at it for a long time, remembering the last letter he'd burned without reading. This one felt different, somehow lighter, less desperate. But it also felt like a test. Finally, he picked it up and read the return address. It wasn't from the house where Ramsey and Cheston had lived during their years of financial struggle. It was from an apartment complex across town, the kind of place where people went when they needed to start over. Harlan opened the envelope and unfolded a single sheet of paper. The letter was short, that I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. But I wanted you to know that we understand now what we did to you and why you did what you had to do. Cheston and I are divorced. I have a job at the elementary school, and the kids are adjusting to our new life. We're learning to live within our means and to appreciate what we have instead of wanting what we don't have. I know it's too late to fix what we broke, but I wanted you to know that we learned the lesson you were trying to teach us. I hope you're happy and healthy. I hope the training center is everything you wanted it to be. Love, Ramsey. Harlan read the letter twice, then walked to his fireplace. He'd built a small fire earlier to take the chill off the rainy morning, and the flames were still dancing over the logs. For a moment, he stood there with the letter in his hand, thinking about forgiveness and second chances and the possibility of reconciliation. But then he remembered the recordings of their voices planning his exploitation, the security footage of them going through his private papers, the lawyer they brought to his house with pre-drafted documents designed to steal his independence. Some things couldn't be forgiven. Not because forgiveness was impossible, but because forgiveness would be dangerous. It would open the door to manipulation, to future attempts, to the slow erosion of everything he'd built and protected. Harlan folded the letter and tossed it into the fire. It caught quickly, the paper blackening and curling as the flames consumed Ramsey's words of regret and understanding. He walked back to his sunroom and sat in his leather chair. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the world clean. Inside, John Coltrane played A Love Supreme, the music filling the quiet house with something that felt like prayer. Harlan West closed his eyes and smiled. Respect isn't inherited. It's earned, and so is revenge. The words came to him like a prayer, like a truth he'd always known but had never needed to speak aloud until now.